We've had a lot of freezing rain around Estevan recently, and the other night when I was going into the Estevan Bruins game, I was hurrying to get inside, and all of a sudden, whoop! Now here's the interesting part. When I slipped like that, I caught myself. And actually didn't even stop, I just kept going. And it was a few seconds before I actually realized that I had slipped and caught myself. Isn't that strange? My mind and my body realized at the moment I started to slip, they calculated what it needed to do, and I caught myself and kept going even before I realized, oh my, I'm going to fall over here, right? In other words, there's probably some big scientific explanation to it, but essentially, because my body knows how to walk, it's been trained on how to keep myself upright and keep my balance, it corrected itself before I even realized I needed to. It just went back to its training and fixed what it needed to do. I like that idea that we respond to our training. We will respond in the way we've been trained to respond. I think maybe I've mentioned this to you before, but I was reading about pilots in flight simulators, and this one pilot was saying he used to hate going in the flight simulator all the time, and it was just so boring. They just kept doing the same things over and over again, and finally one day he complained to his instructor, and his instructor said, when you're in trouble, you will revert to your training all the time. So you have to train well. You have to learn the right decisions so that when you need them, you make them automatically. I kind of like that principle when it's applied to lots of different things. I like the idea that we should decide ahead of time in lots of areas. For example, if you have trouble dealing with someone, it's valuable to decide ahead of time how you're going to respond to them. Because if you wait until you get in a bad circumstance, you're probably just going to respond the way you've always responded, and that's likely not going to be good. If we decide ahead of time, I'm not going to let them push my buttons. I'm not going to get upset, no matter what they say. I'm not going to retaliate. If that's the way we train ourselves, then if we put ourselves through that training enough, then we will respond that way. If we leave it up to others, they will decide what we do, and we don't want that, right? I like the idea of deciding ahead of time, because that's when you make the best decisions. Not when you're in the pressure cooker, but when you decide ahead of time. My favorite illustration of this, and I've used it lots of times in lots of sermons and classes, is when you're playing baseball. If you are playing baseball and someone hits the ball to you and you catch it, and then you look up and look around and try and decide what to do with it, you're in trouble. The time to decide what to do if the batter hits the ball to you, the time to decide what to do is before the ball is hit. You have to know ahead of time that if the ball comes to me, I've got to pick it up and throw it to first base, or I've got to get the guy on third base, right? If you wait until the hit to start thinking about what I'm going to do, you're too late. You will do the wrong thing every time. It is to our advantage to decide ahead of time. It is to our advantage to decide what we will do so that others don't force us into decisions. In fact, that's a really spiritual principle too. I like Jesus in John chapter 14, just before he goes back to heaven, he says to his disciples in verse 1, "Do not let your hearts be troubled." That sounds like a decision to me. You get to decide, will I let my heart be troubled or not? He says, do not let your heart be troubled. Trust in God, trust also in me. That's the other half of the decision. The decision I get to make is, will I let my heart be troubled? Will I be weighed down and pushed around by everything that happens to me? Or am I going to decide to trust in Jesus and trust in God and trust in his provision? Which decision will I make? If you don't decide ahead of time, you will be pushed around by every circumstance, every bad thing. You will have troubled hearts all the time. So maybe we need to make a better decision. Maybe we need to train ourselves to trust in God before we need to trust in God. Maybe we need to learn to trust in God before the trouble comes. Decide ahead of time, and then you will make better decisions. You will respond better, and you'll be training yourself all the way until you need to make a good decision. If you like this video, pass it on to other people. I'd love that. And subscribe so you don't miss any that are to come. Have a great week.